plan do not take us down this path. And secondly, Mr Turnbull has got to show that he's not Abbott light. You know, this has got to be a change that is more than one of style. It's got to be a change of substance. And we need to ensure that Mr Abbott's crazy antipathy to urban rail is off the agenda. We get a contribution for our rail project.
So you got stop the Freight Link project.
Stop the Freight Link.
And put that money into rail.
Put the money into rail, which is a project now that is absolutely. This has been a crazy, chaotic infrastructure program that has been very much directed by Tony Abbott and his obsessions. We need Malcolm Turnbull to prove that he's actually different and actually start doing this stuff. So do you still have, do you know your family tree all the way back to that Pinjarra massacre?
Yeah, our lawyer, I've given that to my lawyers, my ethical ancestors. Finding a legal avenue we can go down.
Really?
Yeah.
For the Pinjarra massacre?
No, for the railway stuff.
Oh, right.
Because we've got Save the Beeliar Wetlands in September now, so we're going to take the avenue as well. I'm going to be the civil advocate. I said I've got nothing to lose. My health failure 4 years ago, and I suffer with chronic disease.
Wrong way, go back. Wrong way, go back. Wrong way, go back. Link. Rethink the 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 link.
How about it?
Rethink the link. 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 Rethink the link.
In Victoria, the East-West Link, and that report was absolutely damning. It said this was a road project that had not been properly planned. This was a road project that had been politically driven, that had not gone through any of those planning processes. It said this was a project that was destined to have massive cost blowouts. And we say all of that applies to this project. And we want Mr Turnbull to show us that he is not just Abbott light, that we've got something more than a change in style, that we actually have a change in substance. That's what we want. And so I ask you to keep up this fight. We have made a reference of this project some months ago to the Commonwealth Auditor General. We've said to them we want this reviewed in the same way the East-West Link has been reviewed. We want to get a proper analysis, and we're saying to Mr Turnbull, give us back the $500 million you took out of the budget for Perth Rail, and let's get on with proper planning. We know that the long-term solution, we know for the last 20 years the plan has been a new outer harbour. Let's just get on with it rather than continuing to play this ridiculous political game. And finally, we've had Mr Barnett coming on radio today saying, well, you know, they wouldn't even consider starting stage 2 of this for another 3 years. Again, confirming that this is a road project that is not fundamentally aimed at the Fremantle port, which we all know is eventually going to have to be moved. So, guys, you've been doing a fantastic job. I've never seen such a well-organised, well-oiled community group.
So Lana and I have just come back from the last 2 sitting weeks of Federal Parliament, and this is such a beautiful way to come home. It's really nice to see you all out here. I'd also like to acknowledge that we're here on the traditional country of the Whadjuk Noongar people, that it always was and always will be. I got a stack of more than 1,000 letters to Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull. Almost slipped of the tongue, almost said Tony Abbott. Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull, we extended a generous and good faith invitation to meet with you folks and meet with us while he's here. He doesn't come to WA all that often. This is the #1 issue that's confronting this town and this community at the moment. He's refused. Maybe that's him on his way now. He's refused to meet with us, he's refused to meet with you, but we're going to be delivering these. He's setting up camp up here in the parliamentary offices a bit later today. So we're going to try and deliver these and get a word in his ear and make sure that that gets through. Thanks to all of you who did that. Premier Barnett was on the radio this morning acknowledging to the ABC that he's put a crater in the state's finances, that revenues have fallen off a cliff, that they're going to need to make all kinds of cuts. And yet he's committing at least $600 million of state taxpayers' money to this road to nowhere that nobody wants. So you can see just what a disastrous situation that he's got himself into. And we know that he is not one for backing down, even though he has time after time after time. So we aren't just here as a problem, we're going to confront this thing. If they continue to put earth moving equipment onto the ground, we're confronting it in the courts, we're confronting it in Parliament, but actually we're here with solutions. As Alana just said, the proposal for an outer harbour and dedicated road and rail links to the outer harbour has been on the books since the 1990s. We're here with the solutions, we're not just here to confront, and that is the word that we were trying to get to Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull today. If the only person he's listening to is Colin Barnett, then he's in serious trouble. We think he should be listening to you folks. Thanks again for turning out.
Different from Tony Abbott. We don't want this just to be a change in style and not a change in substance. A very interesting report came out today from the Auditor General, absolutely slamming the Victorian East-West project, which is a project that has all the parallels with this project. It was shown that the planning had been non-existent, they had underestimated the cost of the project, there was simply no probity around the entire process. We say to Malcolm Turnbull, this has been a really, really poorly planned project. Let's go back to the drawing board and get this right. Let's have a look at the work that has been done for the last 20 years on the outer harbour, and let's make a sensible decision about how we spend a couple of $1 billion of taxpayers' money rather than continuing with this really poorly planned political process.
The Premier said today that the budget disaster. Is it a bit of ironic that they're putting all this money into this road?
Well, it is incredibly ironic, and in fact you've got to understand that $500 million came out of the federal budget that was destined to go to the WA government to help them build that Forestfield rail. So we would have actually had $500 million to assist Mr Barnett to manage that project and to meet his election commitments. But instead of doing that, we are putting the Commonwealth money into a road that wasn't part of any election commitment, and indeed, as we've all understand, did not come out of any government department, any planning agency. It was designed by Matthias Cormann and Mike Nahan meeting to work out how they were going to fill this hole created by removing the rail fund. So we know in WA that Mr Abbott's crazy antipathy to urban rail has driven the infrastructure planning in this state. It has taken the money out of the rail projects and it's put the money into these poorly planned road projects. So what we're saying to Mr Turnbull, show us that you're not Tony Abbott light. Show us that you really actually get this. Let's have some proper planning process. Spend the next 2-3 months reviewing this Perth Freight Link and actually coming to terms with all the planning challenges that exist, rather than agreeing with Mr Barnett that we're now only going to do half of a flawed project, which doesn't make it half as bad, it actually makes it twice as bad.
Prior to, I think earlier this year, you proposed a handout of about $300 million or some type of handout that was adopted by federal Labor. Given that, would you propose something similar this year to compensate for a fall in GST?
Absolutely. I think, I think Mr Barnett has fought this GST argument on some of the wrong grounds, but there is no doubt that we need a special compensation package. I do point out that the last one we received, actually, instead of being worth $500 million, in reality was only worth $250 million because they took $250 million out from other infrastructure projects. So if you actually look at what we got over 4 years, there was a lot of smoke and mirrors, and we only in fact got $250 million. But I think all West Australians know that we are being ripped off by this system, and we need a compensation package, but we need it to be upfront and transparent, not this somewhat dodgy arrangement that was entered into last year, where we got a lump of money in one pile and then lost another lump of money in another pile, showing that our net benefit was only 250 million.
Letters that we collected over a period of only 3 days to Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull, inviting him to meet with local residents and people who are stepping up to protect the Beeliar Wetlands and indeed protect their own homes and communities. We invited him in good faith to meet with us and to meet with the residents and the people who are very, very concerned about the Perth Freight Link. He's refused to do so. My great fear is that the only person Prime Minister Turnbull is listening to is Colin Barnett. What a disaster that would be if that was the case, and what a waste of a trip that would be. We think the Prime Minister should listen to these residents, people from close to the impact area of the Perth Freight Link and people from all over the Perth metro area who've shown up today, who've signed up in great numbers. We don't want the Perth Freight Link, we want a dedicated road and rail link to the outer harbour. We're here today to present solutions. If it's a confrontation that Mr Turnbull wants in an election year, we'll certainly give him one, but we don't think it's necessary. We think there's a sensible pathway through.
He gave no suggestion on radio this morning that he's willing to listen, saying we need a mix of transport solutions.
Yeah.
Why is that argument flawed? Why is he not right that we need a mix of transport options?
We do need a mix of transport options. We need heavy rail, we need more rail cars. Barnett just cancelled those. We need Perth Light Rail, he just cancelled that. We need greater high frequency bus services to the outer metro area. What we need in the freight space is we need freight on rail, and that's immensely difficult to do in and out of the congested port of Fremantle. And that's why we think the bipartisan work, or the cross-party work that's been done over more than 20 years for a container terminal at the outer harbour in Coburn Sound is the sensible way forward. You can have freight on rail, you can have passengers on rail. It's time that the Barnett government actually, if it's not willing to fund this infrastructure, is get out of the way for someone who will.
Scott, why this location this morning? You're hoping to bump into the Prime Minister?
Yeah, so on the 39th floor of Exchange Plaza is Commonwealth Parliamentary Offices. That's where Mr Turnbull and his entourage will be basing themselves today. We're hoping to grab a couple of minutes with him, but if not, 1,000 letters from concerned residents will be waiting.
It's amazing why he's not prepared to meet with local mayors, the community, to talk about local issues.
I heard he's talking to Peter Newman though.
Yeah, he said that this morning.
It's absolutely frightening. We've sent letters off requesting meetings. We finally get a reply which says I'll refer your information to another portfolio, etc. We just say, wow, if you put yourself above the people, then there's serious concerns that we have with the Prime Minister who's not prepared to meet with the people.
Yeah, it is true. 300 million, good money after that.
Yes.
Well, one thing's certain, you're not going to stop.
No consultation. It's very important.
You're doing the right thing for everybody, and we really appreciate it. And not everybody can do it. So the fact that you're here, you represent tens of thousands of people that
and you inspire them as well. Every time you stand up, you're inspiring another dozen people at least, if not a lot more. So really take heart in that.
Well done.
Thank you. Well done, everybody. We're flying our flag here at Commonwealth Parliamentary Offices, and it doesn't matter where we need to go. We're going to fly this flag, and we're going to fly it high. Thank you so much.
Everyone turn around and wave up there, because that's where the Prime Minister is.
We're here and we're not going away.